What's up, guys? We got Cody D'Acquisto in here with us from XOP. You don't know us that well, but we've been following like your family's hunting style for a long time. You know, we just had Dan Infalt in here yesterday. He's been a mentor of ours for the last several years, and he's been good buddies with your dad and friend of the family, you've told me in the past.
Yep.
Just the way that you guys hunt is very interesting. Just kind of talk about like how you learn to hunt and the whole progression into that mobile strategy, I guess.
Yep. Well, I guess for me, I mean, coming up with the old man in the industry and lone wolf tree stands and all that, I mean, I was sort of just kind of there. I got into hunting a little later than I think people would think. You know, I didn't start bow hunting till probably about 16. Obviously, I always watched the old man, and I joke with people, but I was kind of, you know, robbed of that beginner stage. You know, I come up and I'm looking at these, you know, 180, 190-inch deer on the wall, and I just, you know, start immediately, like, wanting something big. So, but he always was a mobile hunter. Back in the early 80s, he realized that, you know, there was a missing link in hunting in general. You know, they were using old Baker stands and plywood stuff. So, you know, necessity is the mother of invention, and he designed and produced the products that he needed to get the job done. So, you know, being able to watch that, or I wasn't around back then, but coming into it, and he was just always a mobile hunter, you know, even on private farms. And so I just came up watching him, and
you killed some big ones yourself.
I've done pretty well myself, and you know, along with that, formed my own style a little bit, and but even Dan Infalt, you know, going back to that, I mean, they've been friends for, you know, quite some time, and you know, I've hunted with Dan Infalt in the past, and all those old guys, you know, really good group of hunters there, you know, so many people get caught in these, well, you can't do this, or you have to do this, and yeah, the mobile aspect has definitely always been, and I don't know if it's just geared toward that way, or seeing the old man being that way, but I can't sit in the same spot. It's you know, it just feels like nothing's happening, you know. I'd rather go out and make it happen and ruin an opportunity than sit there and wait and never have it happen, you know. So that's just the kind of.
I think maybe we should take a step back and maybe just have you talk about where you're from and kind of what your strategy even is, your hunting style is. Just a broad overview. I mean, I know that could be a 2-day story. Or
a lot of people think, like, you know, me and the old man have this great, like, you know, rainbows and lollipop relationship. It is super competitive in the family, like, especially. I mean, you know, we might go, you know, 2 months of the season and not even say a word to each other, hunting the same farm, just, you know, bouncing into each other here and there. But like I said, I think the way I learned was a little different. I definitely had an awesome advantage. I mean, was he the type of guy that sat me down and said, all right, Cody, now this is what a track looks like, or this is what you want to do? Absolutely not. But I was, you know, just following through the brush for years, just watching, just, you know, tagging along. And when I started hunting, I just, you know, obviously had no idea what I was doing. I was always kind of into the extreme sports back then, you know, and that always kept me out of the woods. But once I dove in and really seen what it was about, that's what hooked me, you know, that running that arrow through that first deer was the seal, and then everything else it didn't matter. So, and then immediately, you know, me being the competitive person I am, and I wanted to be on my own. I'm like, all right, Dad, get the hell out of here. You know, like, let me find this out. I mean, nobody likes to live in a shadow, so bedding areas is one thing. You know, everybody had taught, oh, you can't go in the bedding area. Well, he's the guy that pioneered going into the bedding area. I mean, and you know, being aggressive on these deer. So I adopted definitely a lot of that mentality and not sort of waiting around. You know, you got to get out there. That these people that, and honestly, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love trail cameras, but I hate them. So many people rely on trail cameras, like. I talk to so many guys. Oh, well, I don't got any pictures, so I'm not even gonna get out there. Like, what are you talking about, man? Like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, I'm hearing this and I'm like, don't believe the cameras. Like, they can help you out. They can really help you out, I think. But
but I mean, the buck may walk right behind it.
It's such a small snapshot of whatever walks in front of it.
I've seen good deer skirt these cameras, and I mean, I've seen them skirt cameras. More so though. They don't give you that much information. I mean, it's only such a small piece of the puzzle that, and then there's also no guess factor either. I mean, on the other hand, I think the best years I have, I don't run a single camera because then that's all you can do is scout and get out there and see what's going on. So
and you're observing and finding, because I mean, one thing that's interesting about you go in there and like systematically kill a specific buck sometimes.
Yeah, that's see, I think that's become more of an addiction than just hunting, like outsmarting a certain animal or at least trying. I mean, some of my best years hunting, you know, I got quite a few deer, but I remember like my favorite year of all of them, I didn't even kill the buck I was after, but what I learned that year, like just being on his tail for months, you know, and then just he's always a step ahead of me. It was like really, after that, I just started knocking down a lot bigger deer and more consistently, just having that experience. Sometimes, you know, when you get in there and you get them on the first sit or you just get a random deer, the season goes by and you didn't learn a damn thing, you know, so that kind of sucks too. But if you can find out where he's bedding, I mean, or in the general area, and you know where he's eating, I mean, that deer should be dead, I think. You should be able to then, you know, use the information you got and kind of get in there. Sometimes they slip through the cracks, but it means nothing to me what was good last fall. Or, I mean, now there's always good funnels and there's always good spots, but
spots that are good year after year.
If there's one thing I learned from the old man, and is just being constantly in the game. And there's so many people I think that are dropping the ball by just, and all of us do it like, oh man, I shot a good buck out of that tree last year.
Oh yeah,
like, I should be in that tree.
To a spot.
I mean, it's when I completely abandoned that, that's when I started being more successful and with bigger deer too. Even on private farms, I might have 10 stands set up in a given area, and I'm hanging and hunting in between those 10 stands. Like, well, why don't you just hunt that stand? Well, that stand ain't in the right spot.
Right.
You know, I mean, I could either pull that one down and move it, or I could just set up a new one if I got one, or you know, so, and I find that I get more mobile as the time is getting. I'll be more laxed at first, jumping to preset stuff.
Right.
But as soon as like the season's coming to an end, or that window's about to be gone, well, it's a new set every time, and then a deer ends up dying. So, I mean, it's not a coincidence, you know. I think that you know, you always have the element of surprise.
That's what kills the big the big boys, especially the oldest, biggest buck on the property.
You realize that first time in is usually.
The virgin sit is what we're after. You know, I mean, and sometimes that can be as simple as sliding down a trail 20 yards. It's just
when you're hunting with a bow, that makes a big difference. Though, I mean, you got 20 yards from getting a shot or not getting a shot many times.
Yep, and that's like my way too, or what I've always done. So I've never killed a deer that was farther than 20 yards. Like these deer that, you know, I'm not a very good shot, man. I want like a 10-yard shot, you know. Yeah. So I like just, you know, putting that pin on them, not even have to aim. So I hunt a lot of like specific trails, like or specific tracks. Like you know, I stopped trying to hog areas and started, you know, dialing it into. All right, well.
You're setting up for this trail,
down this trail,
down this. Yep.
Yeah, and a lot of guys that, well, you know, they get a little upset with that, or, well, I'm not seeing any deer. I'm like, well, do you want to see deer, or do you want to kill a good one? Like, what do you want to do? If you're cool with sitting on a field edge and seeing 60 deer every night and seeing those bucks across the field, dogging does or whatever they're doing, then you could sit and watch, but I'm going to get in there. You know, I mean, I'm not going to sit around and, oh, well, maybe they'll come on this side of the field today.
No.
Well, what the hell? Why would I do that? Like, why would I waste another day? So, I'll get tighter, more close quarter situations, and you know, being mobile. Like a couple of years ago, late season, you know, the time's winding down. We had an early thaw, and these deer started coming way out to, you know, the open fields. Now they weren't strictly on these food plots, and you know, I remember going in. It was actually a week before ATA a couple of years ago, and I went in 10 days a row. You know, twice a day, and hung a new stand every day. And the day before ATA, I finally connected with this damn thing, and you know, got him at, you know, 16 yards, you know, right on the trail he was coming up, where he was bedded with a bunch of does. So, you know, I think when all else fails, just start bouncing around, man.
Right.
I mean, start figuring something out.
A lot of private land hunters over the years have gotten into this mentality, you know, that they need to have this big giant box out there and all this stuff set up in these, you know, predetermined areas, and then they need to make that area sweeter and everything, and that's good, you know, that land management stuff, but you're killing them mobile.
And these guys, if you ask me, that's a different sport.
Right.
I personally think it is. I mean, it's just the way I've always seen it. So, I mean, elevated blind hunting on food plots, don't get me wrong. I mean, I have nothing against it. It's a great way to do it. I have no desire to sit in a box blind and shoot something over a food plot. It trips my trigger more just getting out there and moving around. I'm big into fitness too, so like I take it, I like the challenge, I like the packing in, I like that too. So, to hunt something down, like to really go out there and formulate a game plan and go after this deer and work for it, and then to kill him inside a bow range, like. And I'm not talking 70 yards that these guys are shooting elk. I'm talking
15,
dude, there's something about
10 yards.
Well, there's something about shooting something at 5 yards too, versus 50 yards you skirt you on a field edge and you get a good shot.
Crunching on acorns and
breathing.
Dude,
I'd never make a 50-yard shot. That would never happen. I mean, I can't do it.
Right. Me neither.
I mean, I've always been a little bit more instinctive when it comes to shooting, but I don't feel there's much of a game plan every year I'm sitting in this blind and
basically waiting for luck to find you.
Yeah, see,
and something to walk by.
Yeah, I just hate waiting. I guess maybe
I want to circle back to, you said, I think a lot of people will hear you hunted that deer 10 days in a row, and they're like, that's crazy. How do you put that much pressure on it? I guess I want to hear your answer for that.
Well, so that's where you just got to be smart about it. I mean, a lot of these guys too. I've never agreed with you give them that space and you wait till that. There's always a way you can get at them. You just got to be smart about it. So, yeah, those guys that say that typically have their stand set for that deer. They know they need a northeast wind to hunt that stand, so they're not going to bother. Well, those guys aren't, circling back, finding out exactly where that deer is coming down the trail, and then getting on that trail. That's good for a southwest wind. I don't give a shit if 10 other bucks bust me. If I'm going to kill that deer, I don't care at that point. So, and that's where, like, maybe if I was hunting that spot and I was just looking for a good deer, then I'd hold off and I wouldn't hunt that spot 10 days in a row. Definitely not. But you got to realize those 10 sits in a row, or, it would have been 20 stand placements or whatever, or maybe not 20, maybe that's exaggerating, but, I might have hunted the same stand morning and evening, but it was a new stand every day.
Right.
But these are new spots. I just knew that this deer was bedded somewhere down in the bottoms on these ridges. And that's like on our farm in Iowa, there doesn't seem to be specific bedding area. Like, there's some areas that they tend to bed more in, but
they bounce around.
Yeah, they'll pop around on a different little ridge or over here, but generally they're coming to the same place, or they have a general pattern. So I knew that this deer was, what he was generally doing, so that allowed me to just keep bouncing around with the right wind and, ultimately getting a shot at him. And actually that was, a late season tactic, and I did that 3 years in a row and was successful. Mm-hmm. So
just got to adapt.
Exactly. And even day one, I've killed numerous deer opening day. Like, and that wasn't it was just going out there and find out what was happening on opening day. First stand set, if you got your wits about you and you're looking at what's going on, you're always going to be in the game.
Mm-hmm. So what's your setup look like? You've got to be extremely efficient if you are hunting that much, mobile.
And that's the thing too, getting into stand setups, there's so much of this obsession with needing to get high too, I think.
Yeah.
Every spot that I go and every time that I set a stand, I analyze it, and it's always different. Sometimes I'll be 20 feet up in a tree. Sometimes I will literally not even use a stick, and I'll just set the stand right, at waist height, and I'll just hop in it. So it really all depends on the situation, but I like to run with, so we have a lighter weight. It's called the Vanish. It's like our smaller. What I try to do is emulate the old original Assault that Dad designed back in the day, because that was my favorite stand.
Right.
And that was an 8.5-pound stand. I like that stand. It's got the tight V taper in the back, so I can get into those little cedars, or even in like a little thick trees, hedge trees down south in Illinois, or even in Kansas. I've hunted a lot of hedge, so I like that V taper, and it's a nice small little stand. I always got 2 sticks, and then I got about 4 screw-ins in my pocket. I don't take any more than 2 sticks. I just don't. I don't know, because if I want to, I'll get 60 feet up in the tree with 2 sticks. I'll make it happen. So I just don't. I want to be light, but I also if I'm let's say I'm scouting on a bike or something, and I can drive some stuff in, then I'll or if I'm going to put it on the back of the ATV, then I don't care. I might bring more sticks, but that's my setup. It's that stand. I got the 2 sticks in the back, and I got a couple screw-ins in my pocket just to get a little higher if I need to.
That's pretty light.
Oh, yeah. It's a pretty light setup.
In most of your setups, what was interesting a while ago, he was talking about, like, setting up on a specific trail where a specific track is coming down, and that's what you're doing.
Yeah. And they're low, too. Like, so I'll get nice and low, try and get some cover, especially late season, but when I set up a stand, so much stuff goes into it. Like, it's the height, the angle of the stand, if I'm going to shoot that deer sitting down, if I'm going to shoot him standing, what trail he's going to come in at, what exact way the wind's going. All that depicts whether, the angle of the platform and how high the, my favorite way to do it is I'll get that thing set up and I'll know, I'll have that seated shot in under 15 yards and I'll literally have my bow on my knee the entire time. If I'm there for 2 hours, whatever, I do not move. I just know that that's all I have to do then is draw back and kill that deer. So, and I think thinking about how it's going to happen and prepping for the situation is the most important part. And that's where I think you lose some success is when you don't. You might not really know. Like, guys hunt areas, but they're hunting areas. They're like, well, this looks like a good area. Well, where do you think the deer's going to come from? I don't know. Like he's gonna come through here. Like there might be a big section, and it's different when you got cross trails. But that's what I meant before about like hogging areas. Like you're never gonna get it all. Pick one and make sure you got that one locked, or get as many as you can. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But
when thinking about that though, and we end up in that conundrum all the time in our heads when we're setting up, because we hunt we hunt pretty much every day for months at a time. Every time we've killed one, a big one, like that's what's happened. Like, we went into an area and we'd be like, okay, if we're going to kill one right here, he's going to come down this trail, leaving this bedding area, right, and we're going to kill him in this whole opening.
Oh, yeah.
And, 9 times out of 10, that's how it happens.
Well, it helps, like, you making a good shot if you have that all visualized.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you got to – I think you definitely got to have at least – an idea of what's going on.
And I think as far as people being worried about how high you're hanging a stand and whatnot, you're hanging a new stand pretty much every time, so those deer aren't expecting you
like
to be
he said a while ago, you're catching them by surprise. They're not
used to a stand
it.
being in that tree for the last 15 years.
They pattern you eventually.
Oh yeah.
So
I've literally killed deer working around other hunters. Like that's honestly a really good tactic. Like when I come into leases or down on these properties, I'll look at what everybody else is doing. I'll find their stands, and I'll hunt right around them and kill deer instantly and get the hell out of there. And they're like, what'd you do? I just looked at where you were. They know where you are. You're not being creative in any way. Like, these deer literally see you. They back up, and they might dip around you, or they might not get up till you're gone. So, you got to look at a lot of different
Using
things.
all that pressure to your advantage. That's what we're constantly doing.
Oh, yeah.
Public land.
And that's, exactly. I'm not, like I said, nowhere near, I don't hunt public anything like you guys do, but I would think that's probably a really good tactic for you guys, right?
It's even just your neighbors, using your neighbors to your advantage. I've done that when I hunted private land back in Wisconsin here for the longest time.
Yep, same thing. It's, I think it's that's a big part of it, but just knowing. And where a lot of those guys, I think too, that comes with just some time, is just knowing how to correctly manipulate an exact spot. It's a funny story, but a couple years ago, it was like the second week in October, and I was scouting with a buddy of mine, and I found this killer little bedding area spot, like in the middle of all this hedge. I brought him in there. I was trying to kind of give him some pointers. I'm like, hey, help me come trim this stand. I want to get it out of here quick. We had a rain coming. It was like perfect scenario.
Right.
And I'm looking. There's a bunch of rolling hills in there. I'm just figuring out how I'm gonna make the wind work, because I knew I couldn't let it wait. So like my optimal spot for that area was like, man, shit, if I had a north wind, it'd be great. But I didn't have a north wind, and I wasn't gonna get one. So I had to make the wind that was going to be the next morning work. And I'm like, so I'm trying to mess around. So I had him come in there with me. And we we set up this spot. And we get back to we camp a lot. So we get back to the tent and we're chilling out at night. And he's like, well, where are you going to go tomorrow night? I'm thinking about going here. And I was like, I'm not going anywhere. My tag's going to be filled by 7 a.m. Like, I'm not going anywhere tomorrow night. Like, I'm going to be out of here. I'm going to be in Iowa. And he's like, oh, you're such a bullshit, man, And I'm like, did you not see that spot we were just at? Like, did you not see the stand? At 7:19, I text him a picture of that deer dead on the ground. I mean, and it was, typical 12. I mean, just came into that, like, just picture perfect. And he's like, dude, I don't get it. I'm like, man, you just got to, sometimes knowing, I mean, when you find those spots.
Called your shot like Babe Ruth.
Yeah, but there's so many of those times that I just screwed up. You know, I get in there thinking it was going to be different. That deer cracks me, he's gone. You know, I've messed up a lot too. So, you know.
But that goes back to that whole confidence thing. Every time you go in there, you're expecting.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You're expecting it to work.
I don't know, time of year, man. I love October. Like I think I've probably killed like 60% of the deer that I have on the wall, you know, in the first week or two of October.
Yep.
Or like, you know, definitely before the 18th, like that.
When some people aren't even thinking about hitting the woods
I mean, 80% of them are thinking about like, oh, lull, you know, nocturnal, all this stuff, and they're not hunting that. And there's nobody in the woods at that time.
I was talking to a guy last year. He's like, well, you can't hunt October. And I was like, what do you mean you can't? Why can't you hunt October? Well, you can hunt October, you just can't hunt in the mornings. I'm like, why the can't you hunt in the mornings in October? That's the best time to be in the woods, in the morning in October. I don't know where this stuff comes from. That's what gets me. And I'm always like, what? Like, and I don't want to sound like a weirdo, but I'm like, no, dude, go out there, man. Get in the morning. Well, no, I can't do that. I heard you can't do that. I'm like, all right, man, good luck. You know, good luck this November. So
whatever floats your boat, I get. We hunt in October a lot too, and that's what we found is like when you're hunting bedding like that.
Especially if you're trying to kill a certain deer.
Yeah.
The worst thing you want to do is wait till that deer gets squirrely.
Yeah.
If you're trying to kill. I mean, I'm just going to wait till he starts rutting up. So he's running around everywhere, and I can't pin him down.
3 miles away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why? Like what?
Because
you know where he is, and
I think you got a window. I mean, if you start picking these deer, you got to get it done. I mean, before like that. I mean, you can stretch it out to like that Halloween, but even then they're starting to get real territorial, and I've even used that to my advantage too, hunting scrape lines. Like I love hunting scrapes.
Right.
I mean, I've killed some good deer directly on scrapes, making scrapes. So I'm all about that when they start scraping. But you know, it's you definitely have a better, I think, advantage. You know, getting them earlier when they're just so like routine, and I think ultimately you got to start to push that envelope a little bit and try and make something happen. Otherwise, it might not happen. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we probably ought to wrap this up, boys. This show's getting crazy. You probably better get back to that booth.
Yeah,
but
it's going to be packed.
If the listeners want to check out XOP gear, where should they go? What's your website? I know what it is, but I'd like for you
XOPgear.com or XOPoutdoors.com. They both go to the same place, and you can find all our stuff there.
Awesome mobile setups. I mean, the gear that you're using, that stand and those two sticks.
At a good price point.
Yep. Perfect for this style of hunting that we're talking about.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for coming, man.
I appreciate it, guys. Yeah, it was nice talking to you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Hope you have a good show, dude.
You too.